What up? What's up, fellas? Where y'all going?
You say their names, say Chambers looking for you, hey, they gone, they running, they be scared, you know? They will kill you in a minute with no hesitation.
New Jack City might be a cult classic, no doubt. Wesley Snipes as Nino Brown. People still act like he was Nino for real. But let's keep it a buck. The movie didn't even scratch the surface of how wild the real story was. What Hollywood showed? That was just a little teaser. The real crew behind that madness, the Chambers brothers, way more savage than anything that made it to the screen. These weren't just some average hustlers on the block. Nah, they came through like a wrecking ball and flipped the game. While most old school dealers were scared to even touch crack, thinking it was too hot, too reckless, these brothers dove in headfirst and ran it like a business empire. They didn't just make fast money, they owned the streets of Detroit. It wasn't just about the hustle, it was domination.
It was just like, I'm done. I'm not going in this field no more, chopping no cotton for nobody. You know what I'm saying now? And just took off. By him not having a game plan, just looking at his criminal record, he was doing a lot of break-ins at that time to survive.
At their peak, they were raking in a jaw-dropping $250 million a year. That's not just street money, that's empire-level paper. And the craziest part? They came up from nothing. We're talking Mariana, Arkansas type of broke. Life out there wasn't hard, it was harsh. Imagine 16 people jammed inside a rundown little shack. Barely enough food, no real comfort, just trying to survive another day. That was their reality. Born into struggle, surrounded by hate, and raised in a place where racism wasn't hidden. It was loud, bold, and backed by the system. Confederate flags flying in the open, and every move felt like it could be your last. In that world, there was no lifeline, no safety net. If trouble came your way, it was ride or fall, all on your own. Back in the day, the Chambers brothers weren't just sitting around waiting for life to hand them anything. They knew from jump that if you wanted something, you had to snatch it. Even as kids, they were already on the grind. Picture this, at the family's juke joint, swiping wallets right out of folks' pockets, hustling grown men in pool, standing on wooden crates just to see the table. Their family ran a club down in Arkansas, so from early on, they got a front row seat to the hustle. They weren't outsiders looking in, they were soaking up game from the inside out. Most kids in their shoes would have felt stuck, trapped with no way out. But not Larry, Wiley, BJ, and Otis. For them, the struggle didn't break them, it lit a fire. That tough life didn't hold them back. It pushed them to chase power, money, and respect. Larry, the oldest, was pure intimidation. Just standing next to him made folks think twice before getting bold. Wiley? He tried to go straight for a minute, did a stint in the military, delivered mail. But the streets had their grip on him, and he couldn't ignore the call forever. BJ was the talker, smooth as silk. He could charm, scheme, and flip a deal with just his words. Cool, under pressure, and always one step ahead.
In many places, the crack trade has transformed small-time hoodlums into big-time entrepreneurs. Among the most remarkable examples is the notorious Chambers Brothers gang of Detroit. Authorities say the Chambers brothers who made this home video didn't even bother to count the $1 bills because it took too long.
Should we throw these ones away, man, since we got $500,000?
Well, I tell you what we can do. We can give it to the poor.
Then there was Otis, the baby of the crew, always out to prove he could roll just as hard as his older brothers. And when they stood together, that bond was unbreakable. They weren't the biggest gang around, but when they stepped in, the whole room knew who was in charge. Now Larry, he was cut from a different cloth, pure outlaw energy. He didn't care about rules, especially not ones built to keep him in check. While his brothers tested out regular jobs for a minute, Larry dove straight into the street life. No fear, no pause. He thrived off the rush. That danger, that thrill of doing what other folks wouldn't even dare, that's what had Larry hooked from the jump. The risk didn't scare him, it fed him. And yeah, it caught up real quick.
Deliver the drugs to gang salesmen at more than 500 crack houses. They use violence and intimidation to discourage competitors and to keep...
One Christmas Eve, Larry tried to pull off a heist, but it went way left. He got snatched up and tossed in jail. Most people would have folded right there, story over. But not Larry. Just 1 week later, on New Year's Eve no less, he broke out of prison like it was nothing, straight out of a movie scene. And get this, he didn't even lay low. Nope. Larry hit the streets boldly, back to robbing jewelry stores like he was untouchable. But all that noise, it brought heat fast. The law came down hard, and this time they gave him 40 years. But Larry, he wasn't made to sit in no cell. He busted out again. Not just once, multiple times. Each time, Same wild look in his eyes like nothing could hold him. He was running off pure adrenaline like he couldn't be stopped. But even the wildest ones eventually hit that wall. After one last capture, it looked like it was a wrap, but then, bam, the state Supreme Court stepped in and flipped the whole case. Just like that, Larry was a free man again. He tried to cool off for real. Went back home, tried keeping it low-key, but some habits, they don't go easy. Didn't take long before he was back out pulling jobs. And this time, someone close to him flipped, betrayed him cold, stabbed him in the back when he least expected it. Back in lockup, but this time, something clicked.
He ran away.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I bet you he ran away at the age of 15 to the young lady house that I had met in Detroit.
You never really been around drugs?
No.
Things of that nature. So how did you get introduced to the drug game?
Well, the young lady that I had came and stayed with,
Yeah.
her moms and their family was...
That second stint behind bars hit Larry different. The wild energy didn't vanish. It evolved. He ditched the chaos and tapped into something deeper. Started doing yoga, meditating, real calm in the storm type stuff. Like he finally figured out he didn't need the streets to feel alive anymore. Physically locked up, but mentally, Larry was rising. The same dude who once broke out of prisons was now running the inside like a boss. He flipped the whole script. No longer just some street legend, Larry became a leader. The other inmates started looking up to him. That mind that used to mastermind robberies, now it was building bigger visions, ones that had real weight behind them. But while Larry was changing behind those walls, the outside world wasn't sitting still. Billy Joe Chambers and the rest of the family were trying to escape that hard life back in Arkansas. Farming wasn't paying the bills, it was barely keeping them alive. So Billy Joe made a bold move, headed up to Detroit, chasing a new beginning.
What do you feel like the most y'all ever brought in a day?
Well, we had got to a point where we was making at least $250,000 per day, every day.
Damn.
At first, things started looking up. He dipped into the weed game, made a little money, got a taste of that good life. But here's the truth. Once you feel that success, it sticks to you. It pulls you in. You want more. Then crack hit the streets, and nothing was the same after that. Billy Joe didn't just dive in recklessly, he played it smart. Sat back, watched how things moved. What he saw was madness, fast cash, wild demand, barely any real supply. The streets were on fire and crack was the match. The game had flipped overnight and Billy Joe was ready to take his shot. With a little help from a family friend who had the right connections, Billy Joe and his brothers didn't just step in, they kicked the door wide open. While the old school dealers were still scared to mess with crack, the Chambers brothers jumped in headfirst and took over like they owned the place. These dudes thrived in chaos. That was their edge. They weren't tied to Detroit's usual crime cliques, and that made them unpredictable. Nobody saw them coming. Just a bunch of country boys from Arkansas, that's what people thought, until they weren't.
Sit your $5 down before I make change.
Before the city even blinked, the Chambers crew built a crack empire that moved like a machine, fast, clean, and ruthless. It tore through Detroit like a tornado, and by the time folks realized, it was too late. BJ was the brain behind the whole setup. He wasn't flashy, he was smart. He flipped a simple car wash and a regular corner store into full-on drug hubs. Everything was tight, low-key, and slick. From the outside, it looked like a legit business. But behind those doors, crack and weed were flying out like snacks in a corner store. His connect, Big Terry Colbert, made sure the product flowed steady. And BJ, he kept things close, mostly family and people he knew wouldn't fold. But the biggest move he made? Bringing in manpower. Word got back to Arkansas quick. Folks heard Detroit was where the fast money lived, and all you had to do was roll with the Chambers brothers. Next thing you know, more than 300 people from back home packed their bags and headed north.
Willie was kind of known as the one that was kind of getting in trouble in and out of jail. Like,
That was Larry. That was my oldest brother.
Okay,
They called Larry Marlowe.
Chasing that street gold like it was the lottery. That small-time hustle turned into a full-blown drug dynasty, and BJ was the one running the show. He might have only stood 5'5", but when he spoke, everybody listened. He wasn't just pushing weight, he was playing chess while others were still learning checkers. To BJ, crack wasn't just a hustle. It was a machine built to print money. And business, it was booming. From 1983 to 1988, the Chambers brothers were running close to 300 crack houses across Detroit, pulling in up to $250,000 a day. That wasn't just some street crew. That was a full-blown underground empire. These guys didn't just hustle, they ran the game like it was Wall Street. This wasn't sloppy corner dealing. Nah, they had systems, real structure. There were rules, ranks, and strategy. Workers had to follow strict orders, and the operation ran like a tight ship. They even pulled off wild marketing schemes. 2-for-1 deals, customer perks, loyalty setups. It was drug dealing with a corporate twist. If you were broke and chasing a hit, they had an offer ready for you. It was straight-up business tactics, just applied to the streets. While the brothers were flossing in gold chains, fresh designer fits, and cruising in flashy whips, their grip on the city was crushing whole neighborhoods. The money was flowing, but so was the pain. Addiction hit hard. Violence exploded. People lost hope. The streets they ruled, they were breaking down. At first, folks might have rooted for them, saw them as underdogs who beat the odds. But the truth started to shine through. These weren't heroes, they were kings sitting high on a throne built from other people's pain. Their empire was strong, but the city beneath it was bleeding out. Then came 1986, and heartbreak.
Real hotbed. Racism was a real hotbed. Even at one time, one of my brothers was walking up the road. I'm in a little small town called Lee Range, Arkansas.
Their youngest brother, Little Joe, passed away, and the funeral, it was a full spectacle. Limos lined up, designer suits, everything top tier. It screamed loud and clear. Drug money paid for this. It was a final goodbye drenched in flash and sorrow. But even with that loss, the Chambers brothers didn't fall back. They came back to Detroit harder than ever, bringing more recruits, chasing more power, and moving colder than before. That hunger, it didn't die. It got even sharper. Only problem, they got too big, too flashy, too loud, moving in silence. That was long gone. The feds were all over them, watching every car, every call, every single move. The game had shifted, and the heat, it was boiling. And this was the beginning of the end. What brought down the Chambers brothers wasn't some slick DEA sting or undercover operation. It was their own ego. The fall kicked off when Larry's ex, Patricia Middleton, decided she'd had enough and flipped. She didn't hold back. She gave the feds everything. The blueprint, the operation layout, who ran what, how the cash moved, all of it. But even with that inside scoop, the feds might have still needed time if it weren't for one massive mistake. Larry and his right-hand man, Jack Frost Jackson, got too bold for their own good. They started filming themselves, on tape, counting mountains of money like it was a rap video, showing off the bling, flexing in big houses, flashing luxury like they were untouchable. It wasn't just bragging, it was evidence, and they served it up on a silver platter. Those tapes, straight up gold for the prosecutors. It was like they directed their own downfall and hit record with a smile. No need for undercover work, these guys handed the case over on camera. By the time 1992 rolled around, it was lights out for the Chambers empire. Streets that once whispered their names in awe, now quiet. The feds weren't watching anymore. They were raiding, kicking in doors, serving indictments left and right. BJ and Otis got scooped up quick. Willie tried playing it cool, still rocking his postal worker uniform like nothing was happening. But they caught him too. Larry was already locked up, but now, he wasn't just doing time, he was the main target, the face of the whole operation. And when the cops hit their stash spots, they found about $1 million in straight cash and enough jewelry to put half the rap game to shame. That empire they built so bold, so loud, it crashed just as hard. Now stack this madness up, 68 cars, over 250 firearms, and another $500,000 stashed away in another corner of the empire. When the feds finished counting, they rolled off with 41 luxury whips. Yeah, 41, that wasn't a bust. That was a straight-up heist in reverse. Detroit Police Chief William Hart got on the mic, chest out, calling it a major win in the so-called war on drugs. But here's the crazy twist. Hart himself got exposed not long after. Turns out, while he was preaching justice, he was pocketing dirty cash behind the scenes. $2 million straight out of the department's funds. He ended up doing 10 years behind bars. Just like that, the line between cop and criminal got real blurry.
A guy and his friend was riding a motorcycle, actually deliberately ran over my brother. And nothing was dead, but that was the type of stuff that we could expect.
Flashback to October 1988. That's when the Chambers brothers trial kicked off. And it wasn't just them. 10 of their closest crew got hit with the heavy stuff. Conspiracy, drug trafficking, tax evasion. The courtroom was packed. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. But what really had jaws dropping? The witness statements. These weren't just tales, they were nightmares. Folks said Chambers enforcers were throwing people out of windows, crushing hands if someone tried to steal a sample. This wasn't just a drug ring, it was a whole fear factory. Some witnesses got too scared to talk, others straight up vanished. But by then, it was too late. The case was locked and the net was closing in fast. And while all this chaos was going down, the family took another hit. David, the oldest Chambers brother, passed from AIDS complications in '87. Just a few months later, the indictments came raining down like missiles. Larry got snatched up again, and that was the final piece. The dynasty that once ran Detroit like a business empire, it started to crumble for real. All the gold chains, fast cars, and cash-stuffed pockets couldn't stop the fall. It didn't end in glory, it ended raw. All four Chambers brothers ended up behind bars. Larry and BJ got hit hardest, both smacked with that kingpin charge. That's the Fed's ultimate weapon, strictly for top-level bosses. Larry got life. BJ faced 50 years. Willie took 21 and Otis got handed 27. But here's the thing, the story wasn't done yet. Willie walked out in 2007 after nearly 2 decades locked down. BJ, he caught a break. The kingpin charge got tossed in '91, knocking his sentence down to 27 years. He ended up doing 23 and got released in July 2010. He was 48 years old, coming back to a world that barely recognized him. By then, the streets had moved on. The Chambers name didn't ring out the way it used to. The blocks had changed. New faces, new rules, new kings running the game. That throne they once ruled from, gone. The stacks of cash, seized or spent. The flashy cars, disappeared. The fear they once carried, turned to faded stories told in hushed tones. All that was left were whispers, old street legends floating around like smoke in a back alley. People still mention them, but mostly Larry. He's still locked up, now deep into his 60s, the last one still behind bars. Meanwhile, Willie, BJ, and Otis are all free, living under the radar. No more flash, no headlines, no drama, just quiet, and the weight of who they once were. Their rise and crash made it onto American Gangster, turning into a street cautionary tale for a new era. But their legacy didn't stop there. Their story helped inspire one of the most iconic films of the early '90s, New Jack City. Behind that film was Barry Michael Cooper, a journalist turned screenwriter who had his finger on the culture and his ear to the block. He was out there during the crack era, documenting the grind, the pain, the rise, and the wreckage. He wasn't guessing. He lived it, especially in Harlem, where the crack wave hit like a wrecking ball. That raw truth, it fueled his pen, and it helped shape a film that still echoes today. New Jack City wasn't just some flashy crime flick. It had grit, it had soul, and most importantly, it had truth. Wesley Snipes snapped as Nino Brown, the smooth-talking, ice-cold drug kingpin dressed in power and dripping danger. But Barry Michael Cooper wasn't done after that. In 1994, he followed up with Sugar Hill, another heavy-hitting drama where Snipes returned, this time playing a Harlem brother torn between loyalty, love, and trying to break free from the dope game.
He also had a club down there that was
Correct.
What did they call it? A club or juke joint? What did
They call it a
that?
juke joint, cafe.
That same year, Cooper dropped Above the Rim, a gritty mix of basketball dreams and street life, starring a young Tupac Shakur. That one blurred the line between talent and temptation in a city where one wrong step could change everything. Those 3 films, they became known as Cooper's Harlem Trilogy, a deep dive into New York's concrete jungle during a time when the American dream looked less like a white picket fence and more like a gold rope chain and a Motorola beeper. What made Cooper's work hit so different was how he balanced street smarts with intellectual fire. One minute he was dropping lines that sounded straight out of a Harlem dice game, and the next, quoting Hemingway or Dostoevsky. It was street meets literature with heart, pain, and authenticity. Critic and filmmaker Nelson George put it best. Cooper wasn't just telling stories. He was translating a whole world onto the screen. He didn't glamorize the drug hustle. He peeled it wide open. He showed the grind, the heartbreak, the violence, the pressure, and the raw, unfiltered truth behind the shine. These weren't just movies. They were time capsules filled with real life, real voices, and real struggle. He painted raw, vivid portraits of young black men chasing fast money, not because they were built to be criminals, but because they had no options. In those hoods at that time, it wasn't about choice. It was about survival. Barry Michael Cooper once said, "I wanted to detail their voices, the way the hustlers talked." He didn't just write characters, he captured them. He even compared his work to The Great Gatsby, but instead of champagne and green lights, it was crack spots and street codes. And just like Gatsby, his characters weren't chasing riches. They were chasing meaning, escape, something beyond the block. Only in Cooper's world. The mansions were crack houses and the green light. It wasn't some distant dream. It was a thick gold rope chain swinging heavy from a hustler's neck. That vision all started with his journalism grind in the mid-1980s. His breakout article, Kids Killing Kids, hit like a grenade. Dropped in the Village Voice, it put the spotlight on a brutal truth. Teenagers, some as young as 13, were neck deep in the drug game. These kids were stacking thousands every week, rocking designer gear, flipping beepers, and rolling with cell phones back when owning one was like having a Rolls Royce in your pocket. And that's where the term New Jack came from. Cooper pulled it straight from the pavement and turned it into a movement. That one article, it flipped the game. Just weeks after it dropped, he was flying first class to meet with Quincy Jones. They brought him in to help rewrite a script about Harlem kingpin Nicky Barnes. But Cooper had a different vision. He threw out the old formula and dragged the story into the crack era. What he created wasn't just a rewrite, it was a revolution. He gave the world Nino Brown, and New Jack City was born. The moment it hit, it tore through the culture like a bomb. From that point on, black cinema, it would never be the same again. Barry Michael Cooper passed away on January 21st in Baltimore at the age of 66. But even in death, his voice ain't silent. It's still echoing through the streets, still speaking through the screen, and still living in every story that came after his pen touched paper. His legacy? Unshakable. If you rocked with us all the way through, don't forget to like, drop a comment, subscribe, and share this with somebody who needs to hear the real story. We're just getting started. More fires on the way, so stay tapped in. And we'll catch you on the next one.